this is Ast3rix and welcome back to my channel. Tonight we are going to talk about repurposing, both the MPC vst and Reason 10. Yes, you've heard it correctly. So if you've been following my channel for a while, you know that I have migrated away from Reason 10. It was originally my primary DAW, and I migrated over to Ableton and Logic. I'm using Ableton way more than Logic nowadays, simply for the fact that I find it much easier to use and it works with all of my gear. As I continue to delve deeper into it, learning more about Max for Live, I'm finding more reasons to make this my primary DAW. So in doing so, I ended up purchasing a Push 2. Now, this is the game changer for me anyway. It has changed my workflow. So I used to have the MPC Touch as my primary controller, and I no longer have a need for it with the Push 2. So what that means for me is that I have to come up with a better workflow for myself. I've spent a little bit of time trying to research what I could do, and I'm going to show you a solution that may not only help me, but it also may help you if you're an Ableton user and you want to still utilize your MPC vst software because you've invested in a lot of the expansion packs, or built your own custom expansion packs and you still enjoy using the sounds, or you enjoy still using the embedded VSTs that come with it. So there's lots of different reasons why you would want to have this particular workflow, and let's just kind of talk about it. So what I've done is I learned how to create an Ableton drum rack for my MPC VST. And let me just bring that over. So essentially what I ended up doing is I mapped all of the MPC's pads within the software to my drum rack, which allows me to use the Push 2's drum pads. And meaning that when I bring this drum rack into the DAW, the corner pads down at the bottom of the push light up. It allows me to be able to not only use that, like program my drums in from the push, but I can also use the push's sequencer. So let me just kind of walk you through how I set up this drum rack, and it may make more sense what I'm doing. So let me go ahead and just kill this. Let me kill what I have open. And I'm just going to show you real quick how I created this drum rack. So I just created an insert MIDI track, and over in the instruments area within Ableton, I just drug a drum rack in, and just a blank drum rack, nothing on the pads. Then I went to the plugins and the Akai MPC, and I drug it down to pad C1. Okay, so it opens up the MPC software, and from here, what I had to do was I needed to know what the MIDI assignments were for all of these pads so that I can assign those to my drum rack. Also on my drum rack, I needed to be able to see the assignments. So I need to turn on a couple of things. So I clicked on this button right here, which actually opens up the chain list, and the I/O button, which shows you the input output. And let me drag this over so you can see that. So that's the input output section over here on that side. Also, it will show you what audio where the audio is going. Okay, so now that I have those things open, what I need to do is a right click, and I'm going to create a couple of new chains. I'm not going to create the entire rack again. I just want to show you how I did it. And okay, so the thing about this is, as you know, if you're an MPC vst user, channel 1 and 2 are the primary channels for the software. There's no getting around it. You can't turn it off. I mean, it is what it is. It's the master for the software. So what I've normally done in the past is I make that 1 and 2 my kick channel. And then I change all of the other channel assignments to like 3 and 4 for the snare, 5 and 6 for my hats, 6 and 7, or I'm sorry, 7 and 8 for my open hi-hats, and so on and so forth. You know, whatever other channels that are needed for whatever the amount of things that I'm using. Okay, so I need to know what those mappings are. So actually the software really, it does provide that information. You just have to go to the file button, go to edit, and you're going to go to program, and then you're going to click note mapping. So when you do that, it opens up this little note map, and it shows you all of the pad assignments and the note values for them on the keyboard. Okay, so now how does that work out with my drum rack? So my drum rack has a note assignment as well. So within Ableton, C1 is the very first key. So I'm going to leave this one as C1. But over here on the MPC, that pad is going to be C#1. So I need to change that note value on this side. And let me roll that back here to C#1. All right. So as you can see on the screen, it activates A1 on the MPC vst software. So okay, good. We're rolling down the hill and we're getting momentum. Okay, so the next pad I want to assign is C#1 on the drum rack, and it's going to be A2 on the MPC vst. So let me change this. And let's talk about this too. So all the notes on the left side that are listed as receive are the drum rack, Ableton drum rack. All of the play notes are going to be the MPC vst. So just note that that's what's happening. So I'm changing note value for the rack to C#1 so that it opens up that for that chain. And the note value for A02 is C1. So I need to change that one to C1. So hopefully you see where I'm going with this. And what I ended up doing with my real drum rack that I built for myself is I did 4 banks. Normally any expansion pack that I've purchased will only go up to that amount of banks. But, you know, you have a choice of going as high as you really want. And, you know, it's really up to you how far you want to go with it. Okay, so the next one on the rack is D1. And D1 on the drum rack side. And it's A03 is F#1. Okay, F#1. Okay, cool. All right, so there's something that you actually have to do to the next set of keys. So A01, and I'm just going to rename these so that we are on the same track here. A01, and I'm going to rename this one A02, and this one is going to be A03. Okay, so A01 has the actual VST instance in it, but A02 and A03 actually need to have an instrument in there or a way to be able to play out to the VST. So if I hit pad 2 right now, see how it shows that there's MIDI note values there, but hey, where is it going? It's not affecting the actual VST. So what you have to do is you come back up here to the instruments, and you have to drag, here, let me light that up. You have to drag what's called an external instrument into that section that says drop an instrument or sample here. You click on that chain so that it opens that up, and then you drag an external instrument there. So now all I have to do is point it to my source. My source is the drum rack. And of course you can change the name of this drum rack. That's really up to you. So you can pretty much call this like what? The MPC drum rack. That way it'll make more sense to you. All right. And when you do that, it shows up as the MPC drum rack in here. So now my MIDI is going to the MPC drum rack, and my pads, I'm going to put this one at 2, and I'm going to go back. It's going to default to 1 naturally because of the way that the VST is set up. And then A3, I need to drag over an external instrument, and I'm going to point it at the drum rack, and I'm going to tell it to be on pad 3. Also, you have the opportunity of changing the audio source. And if you're an MPC user and you're used to doing that within the MPC VST software, you know that you use the pad mixer for that, and I'll show you that quickly here. So I'm just going to change pad number 2 to 3-4, or output 3 and 4. And I'm going to change A03 to pad or to outputs 5 and 6. All right, cool. So over here, let me just close out of that for a second. So right now I don't have any samples in there. I don't have any kits created or pulled over. I'm just going to pull over. Whoa. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so I brought over a kit so that I can have something to reference. So I just want to show you that now it works. So that's the kick, snare, and a hi-hat. So everything is working as far as from triggering the VST software. And let me show you that pad mixer real quick so that you can see how to separate things. So if you go to the pad mixer, and we'll just scroll up a little bit so that we can see just this top part. So we're going to roll over. So A01 again is naturally going to be 1 and 2. That's just how it is. It really needs to stay that way. So but pad number A2 is going to be 3 and 4. And then pad number A3 is going to be 5 and 6. So as long as you know those things, you know that you can separate everything. And the reason why I do it is sometimes I like to add effects to those things. Like if I want to add a little bit of echo or some delay to my snare, or do something weird with my hi-hats, like add an Ast3rix or something like that to it. You can you'll easily be able to do that. And let me just show you that. So instantly what it does, when you add those chains, it separates things out in groups. So just like you're used to using in Ableton, you now can drag effects over into those channels and treat them, just like any other instrument in your setup. So that is how I repurposed my MPC VST. And okay, so you're saying, how does it work? So basically all I'm doing is I'm using it as a sound module source. I no longer arm the VST. So I don't even touch this. It doesn't exist anymore. If you try to run or arm the VST and then use the pads to program, what'll happen is it'll create two things. It'll create note values in Ableton, which will trigger the sounds in the VST, and it creates another set of MIDI notes in the software itself, which triggers the sounds that you're trying to use. So again, you really no longer need to use the arming mechanisms within the software if you're going to do it this way. All we're concerned about is the outputs of the software. Also, some instances, volume will matter. Like there are some really snappy sounding snares that I have in my collection, and sometimes you may have to tone those down a little bit in here in the pad mixer just to get them to a level that you can work with within Ableton. So also this way I can use the push to sequencer, or the drum sequencer. Sorry. So much information, so little time. So you can use the pushes drum sequencer to be able to program beats, and I'll just do a little quick demonstration just to show that it really does work, that I'm not just blowing smoke at you. It really works. Okay, so let me just start here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to select C16 right there. So I'm going to put, whoops, I don't want to do that many. I'm still trying to get used to using the push for this. So it's like I'm having to teach myself how to use the pushes sequencer. And I normally am used to just using my drums, like manually programming my drums. So bear with me here. All right, so I'm going to put in just a couple of kicks here. So I'm doing like an 8-bar. So that's with the drum sequencer. And again, I'm going to have some B-roll going here. Let me... All right, so let me put a snare in there. Okay, so see, it works without you having to arm the MPC's sequencer. So in doing so, let me just show you what's happening. So now, see how that the MIDI note data shows up? We were never able to do this before just by using the MPC's internal sequencer. It would not sync up in a logical way to allow you to do it. But you can do it without arming the MPC software. Okay, all right, so now that you see that, it also works in conjunction with those the software instruments. So there's some special things that I normally will do with this though in repurposing those. So I would normally like create my arrangement with my drums like you normally would want to, using all the MIDI note data, you know, yada yada yada. You're creating a song. Now using the internal VST's software synths is a little bit more problematic. And the reason why I say that, and here, let me bring up another track, and then I'm going to bring in one of their little plugins. Okay, come on. I don't see all my regular plugins not yet. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here and I'm going to turn off all the VST information for the DAW and only have it see the MPC's expansion information. So I'm going to select that as my instrument, and let me see what we got there. Go back to home. Okay, so this is the problem I've ran into with the VST instruments. Okay, so because I'm using a drum rack to be able to assign that MIDI note information, I find that it'll lock the plugin down to just the keys that have been assigned. Now, it's not a problem once you've programmed all of them in there, then it shows up across the pads, but that will affect the overall, like any drum patterns that you have set up. So I haven't quite figured out a way to be able to use the plugins effectively with this particular method because I have it set up in a drum rack. This part is gonna require just a little bit more research. I may have to end up, ultimately what would make this work is if you could open up a separate instance of the MPC VST. That would resolve it completely. But as you know, you can only have one instance of the VST software open at a time. So unfortunately, that is the only downside to this. Now, if you wanted to use those instruments, I suppose what you could do is program all your drums and bounce the audio down to, or bounce the MIDI note information down into audio, or flatten that track so that it becomes audio, and then open up a regular instance of the MPC VST software, and that would resolve it. And then you could still use the plugins, the internal plugins. So that would be an alternative workaround for that, which requires just a couple of more steps. I mean, ultimately what you're going to end up doing is building out your drums, using what other sounds that you're going to use in conjunction with it, which is, you know what, the more I think about it, maybe that's not a cool idea. Maybe it's more problematic to do it that way. So I guess what I ultimately am more concerned with is being able to keep access to my drum sounds, because normally that's really all I ever really use the MPC for to begin with, is just drums. The other plugin stuff was just like extras to me. But if you're really looking to do this and be successful with it, yeah, alternatively you could do all your drum programming, flatten it into an audio file, and then close out of your drum rack, and then open it in just another instance of the VST software, and then record the sound that you want to add. So that's the end of the repurposing of the MPC. Okay, let's talk about how I'm repurposing Reason. So I actually still like to use some sounds within Reason. So what I've done is I've basically created like a stripped down template in Reason. And there's a couple things you really need to know about Reason too as well. Unfortunately, you can't remove the master section. The master section is a problem when you're trying to use it this way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect the device. so that it no longer routes or provides automatic routing up to the hardware interface. So I want to actually be able to use the hardware interface just like I would like directly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag over a couple of instruments and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So see how it automatically routes up to the audio or the audio input output when I drag over that that Aquos X4. Let me bring over something else. Let me bring in like layers. That's pretty cool synth. Okay, so this is the only thing I don't like about this setup is that it tries to do that automatic routing with the master interface. Let me make sure that that didn't happen. So, okay, so the Aquos is on channel 1 and 2, and this wave layers wave edition synth is on 3 and 4. So just remember that. The other thing that is a little quirky too, that I found with using Reason this way, is that the focus of the instrument has to be done from Reason. And here I'll show you what I'm talking about. Let me go ahead and create 2 audio tracks that'll cover both instruments. So in Ableton, you have to tell it that you want it to be from Reason. I'm just going to do that for both. That very first synth is on 1 and 2, and you have to set it to monitor in. And the other synth is on 3 and 4, and I'm going to set that to monitor in. Okay, so synth number 1 is that Aquos, and it's because I have it selected as the present instrument over here in Reason. So to switch over to the other one, you would think that you could just select over here in Ableton to give it focus. Yeah, that doesn't work. You have to come back over here to Reason, and even though you're not using the sequencer in Reason, you have to select the device over here in Reason's sequencer to give it focus. So I guess ultimately, if I really wanted to, I could probably build like a combinator, or just build a straight up template with all of my favorite synths in that template, and have all of the routing already set up. And it's probably a good idea because it saves you from having to do all this manual routing. I haven't figured out any other way to do this outside of oh, I'm sorry, I can't stop doing that. So I haven't figured out a way, an alternative way to do the routing. If anybody out there is more versed with this, please leave information in the comment section about how you've set up Reason within Ableton, and how you've set up your routing, because it doesn't do it automatically once you've taken the master section out of the equation. The master section was, it's set up to do effects sends and returns under normal circumstances, so all of the routing was done through it. But when you take it out of the equation and having to go direct, it doesn't automatically route the instruments up to the audio input output interface. So it's kind of problematic, but not really. Again, it's about creating templates for, I guess, different situations. So for me, it depends on what kind of music I'm going to be doing. And I don't have that many Reason-based software plugins from Reason. Well, you know what? I take that back. Yes, I do. Because I used Reason for a long time. So not only have all of the regular Reason devices, but I have like layers, wave edition, the Parsec, the PX7 Radical keys, you know, the Umph club drums, which is new. And then I've got Heavyosity's Aeon in there. These are things that I purchased separately, you know, when I was using Reason heavily. So, of course, I would delve deep into their own built-in plugins. Some of them are free. You know, Antidote, that's something I purchased through them. So these are the things that I've been missing, being able to play around with within Ableton, because they're not VSTs. They're part of Reason's proprietary rack equipment stuff. So now I have a way to be able to continue to use those things, and you know, I can still go out to the Reason store, and if I find something I like out there, I can still purchase it, and I can still use Reason to be able to drive it. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes Reason does really have some really interesting rack plugins that are, you know, you can't find them anywhere else except other than Propellerhead. So that's all I've got. I just wanted to show you guys how I'm repurposing some of the software that I've purchased and not wasting money. Because I'm heavily invested in my MPC by buying a lot of the rack, the expansion packs, and also with Reason. You know, I purchased a lot of their proprietary rack plugins. So instead of just not being able to use them, I can rewire to Reason, and I can use the MPC vst without arming the transport, and life goes on. Well, I hope that you find this information helpful, and I'll see you guys on the other side. Oh, hold on before I go. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. Every subscription to the channel helps to grow the channel, and it allows me to continue to be able to provide you guys this type of content. That's all I've got. See you on the other side.